Thousands of years ago, in the South Indian Ocean, lava boiled beneath the sea's surface. An island was born, and its name became Mauritius. Though many humans passed through, its first long-term inhabitants came in the 1700s. Through chapters of exploitation and liberation, today Mauritius is said to host rich cultural pluralism and democratic stability. The tropical island nation is east of Madagascar. It occupies 2,040 square kilometers and is home to over 1,364,000 people, 52% of which are women. Since 1968, when Mauritius declared independence, the nation has been a parliamentary democracy in which there is a unicameral parliament, prime minister, and president. In 2015, the nation elected its first woman president, Ameenah Gurib Fakim. In spite of Mauritius's challenging history and image of resilience, Mauritian women occupy positions of power less frequently than men and face greater challenges and vulnerabilities, especially amidst the consequences of climate change. Mauritius's miracle status is only the cover of the book. Within its contemporary chapters, struggle and strife continue, especially for women. By looking into Mauritius's history of both struggle and strength, investigating the power of women in Mauritius across class, and paying particular mind to climate change and its gender dimensions on the island, we can appreciate Mauritius as a story of still trying hope and accomplished resilience. I present to you Ameenah Gurib Fakim and the Mirage of the Mauritian Miracle. Before we continue, it's important that we establish some mutual points of departure. First, we know that female and male are biological descriptions, but to be a female is not to be a woman. Womanhood is a cultural description. What it means to be a woman originates from a culture's categorizations of gendered characteristics. Second, we know that when 100% of a population is equitably involved in society, that's good. However, when 48% of a population is allowed involvement, that's structural violence. More specifically, it's marginalization of the other 52%, and that's not good for anyone. Ameenah Gurib Fakim says, you cannot win a football match if 52% of your team is removed from play. Finally, we know that leadership and power are two different things. While there can be overlap, just leadership isn't enough. As Gurib Fakim puts it, to make a difference, we need women in power and who use it ethically. Now for the tea. Mauritius, as an island, was never home to any indigenous population. The first visitors to the island were Phoenician, Malay, Swahili, and Arab voyagers between the 11 to 1500s. In the 15 to 1700s, the island experienced multiple colonizing settlements from the Portuguese, Dutch, and eventually the French East India Company. From 1715 to 1834, the French East India Company claimed the land for France to produce cotton, peppercorn, gold, cinnamon, and sugar. Mostly sugar. The first long-term inhabitants were enslaved individuals from African countries and the French settlers who kidnapped them for exploitation. Meanwhile, Britain and France battled over the land and laborers for profit. In 1834, British rule abolished slavery, and in its place, indentured labor was introduced in 1835, bringing hundreds of thousands of people from India. For many years, the land and its people were exploited and oppressed, as if the island were the world's sugar jar and its laboring population was a spoon. In 1968, Mauritius declared their independence, and by 1875, a more summit scheme process began, allowing former laborers to receive land as reparative action and structural remediation. As it seemed that the nation's population was moving towards equity, the island's industries boomed within a global capitalism. In the 1980s, the industries for garments, luxury tourism, and sugar swelled. To match the growth, more laborers were recruited to work cheaply. These migrant workers came primarily from countries like China and Bangladesh. By the 1990s, Mauritius became a middle-income country. This post-colonial island's spectacular economic achievement was dubbed the Mauritian Miracle. But below the surface, gendered divisions continued to fester. About half of women, compared to only a quarter of men, are unemployed. More unemployed women than men have higher levels of education. Women, when they are employed, earn on average 42 cents to a man's dollar. And sexual harassment in the workplace is reportedly pervasive and undercombated. Migrant women as workers are disproportionately affected by workplace injustices. Among risks include employers confiscating passports. Without a passport, a woman cannot leave the country, find another job, or seek legal help to allow safe ways to provide for themselves or their families. This is only part of the picture. In 1968, when Mauritius gained independence and wrote their own constitution, women and men alike were given the right to vote. Rights to participate in political life and hold public office were equitably declared. Despite being 52% of the population, women have never comprised more than 20% of parliament. Something was holding women back from this power. So in 2012, mandates passed requiring 1/3 of local candidates to be women. Yet, in the most recent election of November 2019, only 11% of parliamentarians were women. In spite of parliamentarian gender discrepancies, Mauritius has had a woman as president. From 2015 to 2018, Ameenah Gurib Fakim occupied this impressive position. Before her time in office, Gurib Fakim was an organic chemist and academic. Primary focuses of the Gurib Fakim administration included mentoring girls in confidence and ethical power, and responding to climate change's consequences confronted by the vulnerable island and broader continent. Ameenah Gurib Fakim's administration was arguably a very powerful chapter for the nation's growth, as well as life-changing for young girls who were able to see someone like them as a whole nation's president. But in 2018, the tables turned. Gurib Fakim's 5-year term was cut short when she made $30,000 in personal purchases and charged it to a not-for-profit group's card. Though she said it was unintentional and paid the group back, in the end, she issued her resignation. There's a closer look to be had at what moments like this say about a nation's perception of women in power. Comparable non-woman leaders all over the world commit greater acts of corruption and face lesser ramifications, if any. The willingness to disempower her was swift and unforgiving. Her power as a leader was different than her non-woman counterparts. Gurib Fakim in her presidency was between worlds. She was more powerful than most women, Mauritian or otherwise, and in the very same moment, weaker than most presidents. As the nation moved on from Gurib Fakim's time in office, climate change's grips continued to tighten and sea levels continued to rise. The impacts to the island include more severe torrential rains, more dangerous cyclones, higher summer temperatures, unprecedented flash floods, decreased rainfall, increased mudslides, rising sea levels, and more. Ameenah Gurib Fakim points out the irony. Mauritius, like the entire African continent, has not really contributed to greenhouse gases, but we are among the most affected. For further irony, women are more affected than men by climate change, but have a smaller carbon footprint, as women tend to walk and use public transit more. To boot, most key decision-making institutions relating to climate change have a male-dominated hierarchy, scantly involving women in decisions that affect them most. Food production in southern Africa is expected to drop by 20 to 50%, potentially affecting up to 90% of the rural poor. Crop and livestock production will become more challenged. Resource shortages are increasing male migration and increasing the burden of work and family care on women. Climate change is exacerbating water shortages. Women tend to be responsible for water management in the community and in the home, so shortages are resulting in greater time spent collecting water. Climate variability is also fueling nutrition-related diseases and epidemics like malaria, increasing the spread of vector and waterborne diseases, reducing drinking water availability, and exacerbating heat stress and respiratory illness. Women tend to bear the brunt of caring for the sick, and household chores, which tend to fall to girls, are increasing as well. Adolescent girls report higher levels of sexual harassment and abuse in the aftermath of disasters. This results from larger families living together in open spaces and a lack of privacy for dressing and bathing, etc. These consequences are increasing agricultural and family labor on women, increasing healthcare duties on women, further eroding women's already tenuous land rights, increasing girls' school dropout rates, and diverting women from other economic pursuits. How great can a woman's burden become before she can no longer do it all? Women are pillars of society. If women are unprotected and unsupported, not only do women hurt, but so does their ability to hold up their communities. All of Mauritius is in danger. So it's clear that Mauritius's miracle didn't bless everyone the same. Though resilient as a nation, Mauritius's democracy remains fundamentally flawed. It is women who are least supported and most vulnerable to the onsetting maladies of climate change. Both the book's cover and its chapters must be read. Of oppression and ongoing liberation, of pain and continued resilience, of disparity and triumph.